take into real consideration how corruption fights back. Corruption always fights back. And whistleblowers are usually the people that are fought back by corruption and the corrupt. And this week is actually just, to take the steps and look and see where we are, what we are doing, what we need to do more in the fight against corruption, and to see what the lessons are, to make sure that we're not missing anything, and where we are missing something, to look into others' journeys and see what we can learn from theirs so that we can do better. So that's what the Whistleblower Protection Week is really about. And we use the voices of those who've walked the route of being fought by corruption and the corrupt. We use their experiences to learn. We use their experiences to change, to call for reforms. We use their experiences also to tell them that we are here for them. So this session where, we're looking at fighting corruption in the financial sector, we thought, it fitting to do so because usually the private sector seems to be forgotten at times when it comes to fighting corruption. We always focus on corruption in the public sector, but there's always business between the public sector and the private sector. And we always have enablers, as they are called sometimes in the anti-corruption space, in the financial sector, people who work in banks, accountants, auditors, who see things, who forensically see how the corrupt launder money and how the corrupt move and move their assets, how the corrupt do not pay taxes and evade taxes or avoid taxes, how the corrupt even go to the lengths of hiding companies and beneficial owners, and literally abusing the systems, and at times even legally, because there are loopholes. So we thought that we could have a couple of whistleblowers with us this morning to give us their experience as people who have worked in the financial sector or something, or areas that has got something to do with money or finances. And Mr. Roger Lachman was kind enough to agree to moderate this session for us. So in the next minute, I will ask my colleague Gemma to just give us some of the logistical and admin things that we need to take into consideration when it comes to audio setting and any video setting, and how the session may actually really go if there's anything that she wants to say. So I'll hand over to Gemma to just give us a quick one before I hand over to Mr. Lachman. So over to you, Gemma.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining. Just a note on interpretation, we will have 2 channels, English and French. Please make sure that you choose one of them and not just the original audio. So you can find the button at the bottom of your Zoom application screen and just choose whichever language you would like to listen in using. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gemma. So with us this morning are Mr. Jean-Jacques Lumumba from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Mr. Biswick Kaswaswa from Malawi. Mr. Kaswasa's audio is still, he's still trying to connect there, but without wasting any time whilst he sorts his audio settings out, I will hand over to Mr. Lachman to begin the session. And thank you very much for joining us this morning. Over to you, Mr. Lachman. You are muted.
Thank you, Pusetso. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2nd annual Whistleblower Protection Week, an event that stands as a beacon of hope and courage in the steadfast quest for transparency and integrity within our global financial landscape. At the outset, I want to welcome some whistleblowers in the audience as well. I'm Roger Latchman, founder of the International Institute for Ethical Governance and Accountability, and I'm proud to announce our partnership with the Platform to Protect Whistleblowers in Africa, the PPLAAF, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, and Gibbs Business School to be hosting this session. This is more than just a session. It is a celebration of bravery, a symposium of truth, and a coalition of those who believe in the power of accountability. Today, we are honored to spotlight the remarkable journeys of two distinguished guests, Jean-Jacques Lumumba and Biswick Kaswaswa, whose stories are not just narratives of personal valor, but emblematic calls for systemic change. Jean-Jacques Lumumba, with the legacy of Congolese independence woven into his very name, brought to light the shadow dealings between the Congolese BGFI Bank, unveiling a network of corruption that sought to siphon the wealth of a nation for the few. Faced with threats that would wilt the resolve of many, he chose the path of an exile in pursuit of justice, rather than silent complicity in the face of wrongdoing. Biswick Kasaswa, in the heart of South Sudan's corporate sphere, stood against the tide of financial mismanagement and malpractice. His integrity as a chartered accountant led him to expose actions that went against the grain of his professional and personal ethics. Despite the harrowing experience of abduction and torture, his spirit remains unbroken, exemplifying the resilience required to enact change. As we gather here virtually, let us channel the spirit of Whistleblower Week to not just listen, but truly hear the testimonies of these brave individuals. And I also welcome some of those that are in the audience to also share their experiences when we open up to the audience. Let us be inspired by these lessons to strengthen the bulwarks, protecting those who dare to speak up. Let this week catalyze our collective efforts to enhance legal protections, bolster corporate accountability, and fortify the international support network for whistleblowers everywhere. I want to welcome you to engage, to deliberate, and to contribute to this crucial dialogue. Together, we reaffirm our commitment to fostering a world where financial integrity is not just an ideal, but a reality safeguarded by the courage to speak and the assurance of protection when we do. Thank you for being here. Let's make this Whistleblower Protection Week a cornerstone for future change. Jean-Jacques Lumumba served as the head of the credit department at Congolese BGFI Bank. In 2016, he started noticing shady activities, suspicious transactions of dozens of millions of rands of dollars between President Kabila's family-controlled bank and organizations with close ties to the president. A few months after his suspicions began, Lumumba alerted his superiors of these transactions. Threatened with a gun to stay quiet by the director of the bank, Joseph Kabila's adopted brother, Lumumba, fled his homeland and bravely revealed this massive corruption scandal. Lumumba is the grandnephew of one of Congo's independence leaders, Patrice Lumumba, who was executed 7 months after becoming Congo's first democratically elected leader in 1960. At barely 30, he held a comfortable position as a bank executive in one of DRC's largest banks. It was his refusal to cooperate with the misuse of public funds that turned his life upside down. Does Lumumba regret his deed? Well, we're going to ask him that just now. The Lumumba Papers in June 2016, fearing for his life, he fled to Europe. In October of that year, he resigned officially from his job. Shortly afterwards, agents from intelligence agencies showed up at his house, but his family was already safely hidden elsewhere. His family later found a way out of the country and met him in Europe. In 2016, the Belgian newspaper Le Soir published an in-depth article on suspicious activities at BGFI DRC, largely based on internal documents disclosed by Lumumba. The documents revealed the bank's involvement in corruption, illegal financing, and embezzlement. The papers also show suspicious transactions between BGFI and the Independent National Electoral Commission. Since January 2017, PPLAAF has been working closely with Jean-Jacques, providing him with pro bono legal counsel, analyzing and researching the documents he provided, and using forensic researchers to discover more corrupt affairs embedded in President Kabila's ventures. Investigations conducted by PPLAAF, Le Monde, and OCCRP show how much public money was embezzled, notably to buy wild animals in Namibia for the private interests of President Kabila. Jean-Jacques has been fighting for the rule of law in his country and for the Democratic Republic of the Congo to know peaceful and democratic times. I'm now going to invite Jean-Jacques to share his journey, focusing on the internal conflict he faced upon discovering the corruption and the steps he took to report these activities internally and the subsequent threats he received. Jean-Jacques, please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Merci, Roger. I prefer to speak in French because my English is not fluent. And if I speak in French, I can tell you my experience of life correctly, and I can have hope to tell you my story and my sad story, and to explain you when I can survive until now. Merci beaucoup pour la parole. Merci, Richard. Je n'ai pas beaucoup de choses à ajouter parce que grâce au résumé que tu viens de faire, tu as brossé toute ma vie. Mais j'aimerais quand même rajouter quelques détails. C'est que cette histoire est partie de 2016 et c'est une histoire que je vis dans ma chair jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Roger l'a si bien rappelé. Ma famille est une famille qui a été émaillée par beaucoup de luttes et j'ai été façonné comme ça depuis mon enfance parce que après la séparation de mes parents, j'ai grandi avec mon grand-père, le petit frère de Patrice Lumumba et la maman de Lumumba qui est décédée en 2000 quand j'avais 14 ans. Et comme l'a si bien dit un jour dans une interview de Patrice Lumumba que je regardais, il disait que mes parents m'ont appris la justice, pour ne pas dire que sa maman lui a appris la justice, l'équité et d'être surtout un bon citoyen. Et j'ai eu la chance de connaître cette même femme à qui je rends un grand hommage aujourd'hui, qui m'a aussi, à travers son comportement, appris à être juste et équitable. Parce que vous savez que mon pays, la République démocratique du Congo, reste l'un des pays les plus riches au monde, mais où la population vit dans la situation la plus complexe et la plus difficile. Et cela a motivé l'action que j'ai eue en 2016 en refusant d'abord d'accepter de collaborer avec ma direction générale qui me poussait et qui m'incitait à rentrer dans des questions de blanchiment d'argent, du détournement des capitaux publics et du financement du terrorisme. Et c'est ce qui m'a amené en avril 2016 à avoir des échanges très difficiles avec mon directeur général de l'époque pour lui signifier ma désapprobation et mon refus de vouloir signer tout ce qui se passait. Et cela m'a valu des menaces de mort, mais je ne savais pas que ce serait le début d'une longue lutte, une lutte que je ne pourrais peut-être jamais terminer parce que la corruption est plus vieille que moi-même qui vous parle, est plus vieille que nous tous qui sommes ici. Mais comme on dit, à chacun son histoire et à chacun son destin. Le plus important pour nous en tant qu'humains, c'est d'exister pour un but et de nous battre pour des objectifs et pour nos principes, afin que demain, ou que nos contemporains, ou même ceux qui viendront après, parce que je sais que ce que nous menons comme lutte aujourd'hui, l'exil que je subis aujourd'hui, les sacrifices que j'ai subis, les brimades que j'ai vécues, ce n'est pas pour mon intérêt à moi. C'est pour l'intérêt de ceux qui viendront plus tard, pour qu'ils vivent dans un continent africain beaucoup plus libre et beaucoup plus où les populations pourront bénéficier réellement d'une répartition équitable des ressources naturelles et des ressources de leur pays. Et c'est ce qui fait qu'en juin 2016, suite à des manigances, j'ai été très vite contraint à quitter le pays parce que ma sécurité y était très menacée. Du fait que je ne collaborais plus et que je ne voulais plus accepter d'être celui par qui pouvait passer des opérations louches et de détournement, ma direction a voulu me faire taire en m'envoyant en prison. Et cela a été très compliqué parce qu'ils ont commencé par des manigances au niveau professionnel. Et très vite, je l'ai compris et j'ai été alerté pour pouvoir quitter le pays. Et 4 mois après, en arrivant en France, malade, parce que c'est une situation qui m'a énormément perturbé, j'ai dû démissionner et l'annoncer au sein euh, des médias publics. Mais avant ça, j'avais entamé quelques démarches pour pouvoir informer la hiérarchie au niveau de Libreville au Gabon, mais malheureusement, elle aussi était impuissante parce que malheureusement, elle cautionnait ce qui se passait au Congo pour des intérêts économiques. Et donc, j'étais celui qu'on pouvait le plus facilement sacrifier. Mais c'est une situation complexe parce qu'il m'a fallu beaucoup de détermination. Pourquoi je vais vous parler de détermination? Parce que c'est une histoire longue, mais j'aimerais par ici évoquer quelques étapes capitales. Vous savez, quand je quitte le pays, je laisse chez moi à la maison à Kinshasa, dans ma parcelle, mon jeune frère, ma jeune sœur et, et ma tante. Et c'est eux qui vont réellement vivre les vraies menaces et une situation très compliquée parce que quand je démissionne, le pays en ce moment-là, je parle bien de pays parce que c'est des hommes qui ont des fonctions clés au niveau de l'appareil de l'État, compte tenu du fait que mon DG était le frère de l'ancien président Kabila, mettent les services de renseignement à la recherche euh, de ma famille ou de ma maison pour pouvoir perquisitionner et menacer tous ceux qui s'y trouvent parce qu'ils se disent que ce que je vais devoir dénoncer, parce que déjà dans ma démission, j'avais annoncé les couleurs de pourquoi est-ce que j'avais démissionné et de pourquoi est-ce que j'étais en train de partir. J'avais été très clair en disant ce que j'avais reproché déjà en étant à Kinshasa à la direction générale et ce pourquoi j'étais obligé de partir compte tenu de l'impact que cela avait eu sur ma vie et sur ma santé. Et très vite, les agents de renseignement sont descendus à la trousse de ma famille. Heureusement que j'ai eu l'aide de quelques ambassades pour pouvoir les protéger et très vite les exfiltrer du Congo. Et c'est comme ça que une histoire qui commence d'un point de vue professionnel finit par créer non seulement moi personnellement en tant qu'exilé, ça m'envoie en exil, ça envoie ma femme et mes enfants en exil, mais ça va jusqu'à envoyer mon frère, ma soeur et ma tante qui vivaient chez moi parce que pour beaucoup dans l'entourage de l'ancien président, c'était une atteinte à la sûreté de l'État, c'était un complot international organisé contre le régime. Et là, eux, ils oubliaient que les détournements leur profitaient. Et donc, il fallait mettre la main sur la personne ou sur ses proches pour comprendre ce qui s'est passé. Heureusement que 4 heures avant que la descente se passe chez moi à la maison, mon frère, ma soeur et ma tante quittent la maison et ils sont cachés à Kinshasa dans un lieu sûr. Et malgré les recherches des services de renseignement, on n'arrivera jamais à mettre. Mais ou encore, grâce à l'intervention de quelques chancelleries, le protocole d'État est obligé de les libérer pour accepter qu'ils viennent vivre en exil en Belgique. Et donc, vous comprenez comment est-ce qu'une histoire qui commence d'un point de vue professionnel perturbe ma vie et perturbe la vie de mes proches. Et c'est comme ça que débute mon exil. J'arrive en France. L'article sort au niveau de Le Soir. Je fais la découverte de magnifiques personnes avant que place n'arrive en la personne de Henri Tulliès, que je rencontre le premier, le maître Henri Tulliès, qui très vite m'offre ces services. Ce sont des services qui vont pas que dans le juridique, mais moi, je me dis que c'est un humain qui m'aide à transformer ma vie parce que, vous savez, venir vivre en exil, quitter son travail, quitter son milieu naturel, c'est perturber toute sa vie. Et c'est l'une des personnes qui me soutient moralement, qui me soutient juridiquement et qui me permet, qui me donne le courage de pouvoir commencer à me battre pour un nouveau combat dans ma vie, qui est celui de lutter contre la corruption et de lutter pour les valeurs et de me réinsérer socialement en France parce qu'il fallait recommencer une nouvelle vie. Et quelques mois après, en 2017, je trouve du travail. Mais malgré le travail, je tombe malade parce que ce que j'ai vécu est horrible. Et 2017, ça a été une des années les plus difficiles où je suis passé très près de perdre ma vie parce que euh, je ne l'ai peut-être pas dit dans beaucoup d'espaces, mais les médecins découvrent des substances dans mon corps qui commencent à détruire mes poumons. Mais grâce à Dieu, je survis euh, et les médecins arrivent à me soigner. Tout 2017, j'ai passé au total près de 5 mois à l'hôpital, dans différents hôpitaux de Paris. Et cela ne faiblit pas dans ma lutte. La bataille juridique commence grâce à place. D'autres révélations sortent grâce à des papiers que j'avais. C'est là qu'on découvre les bateaux Enigma, les affaires avec la Namibie, les affaires des animaux. Tout ça commence à apparaître dans la presse. Et c'est le début d'une longue lutte où la lutte que je mène inspire d'autres personnes, mais met en lumière quelque chose, c'est que les lanceurs d'alerte ne sont pas protégés et sont sujets à des menaces de mort, à l'exil, à la prison. Et ça fait en sorte que ma vie est totalement bouleversée, mais malgré cela, je retrouve du travail après être sorti de l'hôpital et je commence une vie où je dois mener activisme et ma profession. Parce qu'en même temps, je dois nourrir ma famille et c'est ce que je continue à faire en travaillant. Et en même temps, je dois mener un combat pour pouvoir aider ceux qui, dans ma situation, euh, connaissent la même chose, mais qui ne doivent pas vivre le même sort que moi. Mais malheureusement, en 2018, mon combat me met en contact très brièvement avec Grady Coco, un de mes compatriotes, qui deviendra par la suite lanceur d'alerte aussi, protégé par place, qui est aujourd'hui condamné à mort et qui vit en exil en France comme moi. Et c'est une histoire, la mienne, qui influence la sienne aussi et qui fait en sorte qu'à un moment donné, les jeunes de ma génération et des générations qui arrivent après nous se disent que le Congo ne peut plus continuer comme ça. Et grâce à cela, les questions de corruption et de gouvernance deviennent des questions majeures et vitales. Peut-être grâce à mon patronyme, parce que ça aide à mettre en lumière mon histoire, qui est une histoire très difficile et une histoire de combat. Et ça me permet, en 2019, d'avoir et d'être primé anticorruption à Award que je reçois, euh, qui est organisé par l'UNODC avec l'aide d'une organisation qui s'appelle ROLAC. Et ce prix est organisé au Rwanda en 2019 et où une autre partie de ma lutte commence parce que je suis d'une reconnaissance qui témoigne de l'engagement que j'ai eu, mais ce n'est rien parce que les périples, les difficultés dans ce combat sont tellement et les risques sur la vie sont énormes, ce qui fait que les révélations continuent. Il y a une grosse enquête qui vient confirmer en 2019, en 2021 ce que j'avais déjà dit en 2016 et 2017, qu'on va appeler le Congo Hold-up, qui est un gros leaks, le plus gros leaks de l'Afrique. Et mon combat continue jusqu'à aujourd'hui. Et ce qui fait que j'ai décidé depuis quelque temps d'écrire un livre qui va sortir en 2024, que j'intitulerai La force du destin, parce que par la force du destin, je suis miraculeusement en vie aujourd'hui. Je ne vous ai pas parlé des incidents qui se sont passés en 2021, où je suis victime d'un vol de mes ordinateurs dans la ville de Bruxelles et de l'incendie de ma voiture et des menaces de mort parce qu'ils estiment que j'en fais un peu trop et que je continue à parler de la corruption, ce qui gêne beaucoup d'intérêt. Et grâce à Congo Hold Up, il est arrivé un fait plusieurs années après, c'est que la banque dans laquelle je travaillais commence à reconnaître les bévues qui se sont passées. Et une affaire que je dénonce en 2016, où je dis clairement que la banque et la société égale ont volé l'argent public à hauteur de 43 millions, cette affaire refait surface grâce à Congo Hold Up et la banque reconnaît enfin sa responsabilité et accepte de payer, et aujourd'hui en train de payer pour rembourser à l'État. Donc, grâce à mes révélations, aujourd'hui, le Congo a pu récupérer 43 millions, le trésor public, et le trésor public, je l'espère, continuera à récupérer les plus de 100 et 150 millions détournés qui ont été documentés et prouvés par Congo Hold Up. Et donc, vous comprenez un peu en résumé comment est-ce que mon combat se passe. Et aujourd'hui, grâce à PLAF, surtout grâce au maître André Tulez, au maître William Bourdon, au maître Georges-Henri Bautier, je suis présenté comme un exemple dans ces questions de lutte contre la corruption. Et je peux partager avec vous mon expérience, qui est une expérience compliquée, mais que j'ai accepté, un rôle que j'ai accepté de porter pour pouvoir mettre en lumière le combat pour l'avènement des États de droit en Afrique et surtout dans mon pays, la République démocratique du Congo, où le vol et le détournement sont devenus un sport national, où malheureusement, ceux qu'on pensait hier comme les porteurs de changement sont rentrés dans ce sport qui détruit le Congo, qui détruit l'Afrique et qui détruit l'avenir de beaucoup de gens. Et c'est ce qui fait que mon combat, malgré mon exil, j'ai décidé de ne pas l'arrêter, de le cristalliser à travers un ouvrage et à travers d'autres productions qui arriveront sans doute dans les mois et années à venir pour permettre à ce que les jeunes Africains et tous ceux qui, comme moi, lanceurs d'alerte, ont cet objectif, peuvent et doivent être des porteurs d'un symbole et des messages forts pour permettre à ce que ce continent que nous aimons tant, de l'Afrique du Sud à l'Algérie, en passant par le Congo, le Kenya, le Sénégal, soit ce continent qui va permettre à ce que les richesses dont nous regorgeons puissent être des richesses qui feront partie de notre voie, de notre détermination à porter ce coup de grâce au changement et à porter le message de l'Afrique un peu plus haut que nous le faisons maintenant. Parce que vous constatez vous-même aujourd'hui les frustrations que le continent vit, les frustrations que les peuples manifestent. Et ça, c'est en grande partie à cause de la qualité des dirigeants que nous avons. Et à un moment donné, cela doit cesser. Et les revendications des peuples, la redistribution des richesses, l'état de droit, la justice doivent être notre vécu parce que nos enfants le méritent. Le continent regorge de suffisamment de ressources pour créer des liens entre nous et pour créer un continent plus stable. L'Europe l'a compris avant nous, l'Asie, le Moyen-Orient, ils l'ont compris avant nous, et je crois qu'il est temps que nous, Africains, le comprenions pour que nous puissions vivre en paix et avoir le pain. Je vous remercie. Je ne vais pas être long pour passer la parole à mon frère, M. Kassoaswa, pour qu'il parle aussi de son expérience et que nous puissions ouvrir la séance des questions et réponses. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Jean-Jacques. So with that, I just want to ask you 2 or 3 questions so that we can get started. And then before we, well, let me rather move on to Biswick Kasaswa. Now, Biswick, a former finance officer for South Sudanese company, Trinity Energy Limited, with legal and security support and facilitated psychosocial help as he worked to integrate into society. He relocated from Malawi to Juba in South Sudan for the position in 2018. Shortly after his contract started, Kasaswa uncovered a complete lack of financial management regulations and policies. After he began to work to improve the system, he experienced resistance. He later helped the Sentry reveal red flags for illicit business practices, including bribery, tax evasion, and trade-based money laundering. These corrupt activities were against his individual values and his professional ethics. And as a chartered accountant, he had to be ethical, have high levels of integrity, and should be honest. And therefore, he mentioned that he had to be fair in his dealings and ensure that all transactions are done at arm's length. Malawi lacks a comprehensive whistleblower protection act, but does have a number of statutes and laws addressing whistleblower protection, including anonymity, protection from retaliation, and punitive measures for retaliation against whistleblowers. These should have been immediately used to protect Kasaswa. Biswick had been abducted, detained, and tortured in an effort to silence him for doing the right thing. Kasaswa helped to show that Trinity was involved in multiple irregular activities. It operated suspicious transactions, including using the black market to exchange currencies, issued suspicious and fake invoices, paid government officials without signatures, and provided loans to government ministries. On the 26th of October, 2018, just over 5 years ago, Kasaswa was en route to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, when he was arrested at Kigali International Airport in Rwanda and detained. He was traveling to approach the embassy of Malawi in Tanzania to explain Trinity's illicit activities and fearing for his safety to leave South Sudan. In the meantime, Trinity Energy Limited had filed charges against him, criminal breach of trust and the theft of $350,000 from the company. On the 7th of December 2018, he was extradited to South Sudan, where he was moved from one detention center to another, including in a shipping container, until he was released in March 2020. Throughout his detention, he was beaten during the interrogations and threatened with death. After a nearly year-long trial, the country court in Juba dismissed the case due to a lack of sufficient evidence, and Kasaswa went back to Malawi. Biswick believes that the irregularities witnessed at Trinity Energy Limited constitute a sophisticated and intricate money laundering scheme. The PPLAAF joined the Sentry's recommendations and calls on Malawi's authorities to urge South Sudan's government to clear full pardon for Malawian whistleblower Biswick Kasaswa, following his unlawful detention and torture between 2018 and 2020. Malawian authorities should have also urged the Rwandan government to investigate Kasaswa's illegal extradition from Rwanda to South Sudan in 2018. So I now want to invite Biswick Kasaswa to share his experiences. Biswick, it's all up to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope I can be heard, right?
We can hear you, Kev. We can hear you.
Thank you very much. I would like once again to thank PLAF for the wonderful support that they have given me during this period. And also I need to give thanks to the Centre for the wonderful work that has been done. A special thanks to Putseso, who made a lot of personal sacrifices to support me during this process. I was arrested in Kigali, Rwanda, in transit to Dar es Salaam, where I plan to meet the embassy there and inform them what has been going on in Juba. I was recruited in 2018 as a finance manager among a number of people that attended the interviews. I arrived in Juba But what was happening in Juba is different from what I read about the company Trinity Energy Limited. Trinity Energy Limited is a company that has got filling stations. They have, by that time, they had an extended credit facility with Afrexim Bank. But my expectation and what was on the ground was different. The company had huge sums of cash in filling stations. We were issuing invoices to Glencore, but I never had a chance as a finance manager to have records of those invoices. I was requested to make huge sums of money to government officials, including the Minister of Finance and the Vice President then. We were supplying fuel to the Defense Force at an inflated price. I remember that time fuel per liter was around 70 cents, but we were supplying fuel to the MDF at $1.40. And with those anomalies, I instituted an internal control investigation, and also I reviewed the accounting procedures and policies in the institution. So I found a lot of anomalies and red flags. I instituted that inquiry. I made recommendations. I instituted that inquiry and made recommendations. I sat down with the board, with the chairman. I proposed that all the cash that were in the filling stations must be deposited in the bank. Our transactions must be bank-based. Because to me, if an institution is having all the transactions using cash, to me, that is a red flag. But things kept on going over and over again. Fuel was being still supplied to sanctioned journals. There were a lot of black market exchange. There were a lot of payments that were given to government officials without explanations, in sacks and in bags. That was very uncomfortable for me. That's why I embarked a journal on reporting. Unfortunately, they arrested me in Kigali and created a charge against me. And the most painful thing is that they created a charge that I have stolen $350,000 and I'm running away with that money. They searched me in Kigali. They did not find that money. I managed to secure lawyers in Kigali. Before even an extradition hearing, I was removed at night from prison at Mageregere and driven to Juba. In Juba, I was welcomed at the airport. I was covered by sacks. I was beaten by the National Security Services, and they put me in a container. After that, they took me to the police station. Trinity people were coming to the police cell at night, taking me out of the police cell, threatening me, forcing me to accept the charges, threatening me with death. After spending time in prison, after spending time in the police cell, they transferred me to the prison. Then we started a process of trial, which took a long period of 16 months without bail. Most of the times when you go to court, Trinity lawyers were not coming to court until a judgment was given on the 30th March 2020, when I was released to go home. I traveled by bus and I arrived in Malawi. That was my opportunity now to share the story. And while I was in prison, I read reports which were issued by the Centre in relation to Petronas. And in that book, the Centre discussed and wrote about Glencore. Now it came to my mind to realize that, oh, this is the reason why we never had any chance to keep the invoices of crude oil. So we sat down with the Centre together with the PLAF from 2020 up to February 2023, where a comprehensive report was issued by the Centre while working hand in hand with PLAF. In that report, I provided all the information. I provided all the supporting documentation in relation to all the corrupt activities that Trinity Energy Oil was involved. As said, they were selling fuel at a high price to the Ministry of Defense. They were providing fuel to sanctioned army generals to fuel war in South Sudan. They were buying crude oil from the government on a credit facility, which was different from the laws of South Sudan, whereby crude oil has to be paid in advance. But to them, that was not the situation. They were dealing with Glencore. They were receiving the money from Glencore, but they are not paying that money to the government of South Sudan. The report that was issued by the Centre is showing all the corrupt activities that Trinity Energy was involved. It is a 104 pages report, which can be accessed on the website of the Centre, as well as the PLAF can be able to provide that. In the process of reporting these illegal activities, I, as a whistleblower, have experienced a lot of things. As I've said, I've been tortured. I spent 16 months in prison. I lost my job, my income. I'm a professional chartered accountant. Since 2018, I've never paid my professional subscription. I'm a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Malawi. It is the same case. Because I'm unemployed, I've been having challenges on how can I obtain my continuing professional development hours. And I'm facing the risk that I can be deregistered. I have lost my family as well. I went into a divorce process. My family's trust on me was lost. But I still believe that I did a good thing. But with that experience, I would have done it in a better way. I'll quickly go through what should I have done to have this process well. First of all, I reviewed the internal control environment. Basically, this is what I did as a financial accountant, as a chartered accountant, as an external auditor with experience, not working in Malawi, but working overseas. But also I've done a lot of internal auditing. I review the internal controls and procedures. I'll do the same thing today. That when you are joining an institution as a finance manager with high levels of integrity, the first thing is to assess the control environment. Because that is where you can identify areas where people can manipulate the system. Once you review these controls, make sure that you issue recommendations to the board, because the review of the control environment will be the basis of your whistleblowing. But as a whistleblower, there are some other areas that you can identify as red flags. And I'll give you my example. After making recommendations, directors were refusing to follow my recommendations. And some employees deliberately were refusing to follow my recommendations. For example, reconciliations. There were no reconciliations. There was constant anger towards me because I was making recommendations and changes. There were a number of directors, including Anne Rutere, who was always complaining about my performance. There were deliberate excuses for non-compliance. They were saying, no, in South Sudan here, banks do not accept cash. But when I went and met government, when I went and met a number of bank officials, they said, no, we have got a very good banking system. Bring the cash into our system. As I've said, most of the transactions were handled in cash. An institution that is now handling a lot of cash today, that is room for corruption. There were payments and instructions which were not clear. The payment vouchers and the cash requests were not clear. What exactly? They'll just give you a verbal direction to say, can you prepare a check, a cash check, and we'll send someone to come and collect it. That was very uncomfortable for me. There were constant and unexplained meetings with government officials. Every day, you do see different government officials coming to Trinity Energy Limited, ranging from ministers to army commanders to revenue authority officials. There are these constant government meetings which had no proper agenda. And there were exchanges of cash between Trinity employees and government officials. I was involved in distributing these cash payments, and I have hands-on experience and observation of these activities. Trinity Energy was engaged in long and very difficult to understand contracts. But also they had hidden contracts, which as a head of finance, I never had access to. For example, a contract that Trinity had with the South Sudan government and a contract that Trinity had with Glencore. I never had access to these contracts. Yet, I was responsible for reporting on the financial performance of Trinity Energy Limited. When we issue contracts, when we issue invoices, those invoices, once they have been sent by me, they were hidden. If you ask them where is the invoice, they find a lot of excuses, and I couldn't have access to these invoices. We underpaid taxes, and they recruited incompetent tax specialists to oversee tax work. When you raise queries, it was always a backfire. There were too many related party transactions. Too many related party transactions. If it is about insurance, the director Anne Rutere was involved. It's about printing invoices. The printer of the invoices, Anne Rutere was involved. If it is about transportation, the wife of the director was involved. So there were too many related party transactions. The logic behind this was to conceal the corrupt activities that were happening. And as I've said, there were inflated prices. Okay. The challenge that I had is that I did not have a proper collection and storage of data. But right now, with the experience, I'll make sure that you have discussions with management, make sure there are minutes, and these are supported by emails. Make sure you have got constant data backup, scan the documents, make sure they are authenticated. If you are using communication of WhatsApp, make sure that you back up this properly, because it was so strange that all the communications that I was doing with my directors, it was done through WhatsApp. I did not realize that until when it was necessary for me to provide data to the investigators. That's when I had to know that you must always have a backup, even for social media communications. Make sure that the storage location is very secure and away from office. In terms of reporting of corruption and red flags, I would recommend that you have to consult a personal lawyer, because this process of reporting corruption, when you are working against with these strong institutions that are connected to the political elites and they've got resources and power, it is a long process. So you need to be patient. You need to follow the procedures. So the first thing to do is consult the lawyer. Share your story. Then engage investigative organizations like Sentry, who are interested in your case. Consult civil society organizations, the same case with PLAF, who will be interested in your case. And it is very important also to engage similar whistleblowers who have got the similar experience. Like in my case, if there is a need for you to report corruption to do with the money laundering, crude oil dealings, black market exchange of dollars, I would be in a very better position to advise. Make sure you also have a chance to contact mental disorder specialists. I would discourage reporting to the government institutions, because like in South Sudan, the police is very corrupt. In Malawi, the police is corrupt. Anti-Corruption Bureau. So I would love to report my case to institutions like PLAF, like the Centre, because they are there to achieve the core objectives, and they are not corrupt. They are institutions that are fighting corruption. I would love to agree terms and conditions with these institutions, because they have got a clear mandate. So it is important that you agree with them, so that you have to know what is the scope of work that these people can do. In terms of support, you need to agree with them to ensure that they have told you well in advance the scope of their support, because sometimes it is misleading. Because as a whistleblower, there are a lot of challenges that you face while you are reporting. I need also to emphasize one thing, that it is very critical that you have to ensure that after this process has been done, the deliverables must be achieved. In other words, like myself, I was involved in the whole reporting process. It was a very painful process, because it took more than 2 years, and my expectation was that it would be done within 3 months, but it's not like that. Make sure you review the draft and ensure that you have got all the documents to support the reports. And what is very critical as well is you need to understand and you have to read the whole report. You have also to be ready for the post-report activities. For example, safe house and security. You should anticipate that you are going to lose income. You are going to have professional liabilities. You should also be aware of media propaganda. And you must be aware that no matter what, you are going to have so much stress in this process. So this is a presentation, and in response to the panel discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Baswick. That was a fascinating story that you mentioned, and you even went as far as giving us some tips on how to stop this, and some advice for financial managers in the house. So Let me, whilst I have you, I just want to ask you a few questions so that we don't to lose on what you've mentioned.
Yes.
You know, you have obviously a very fascinating story. You've gone through a lot of torture with death threats, and you know, and I think Whistleblower Protection Week, you know, is so crucial because, like you've mentioned, you've lost your income, and furthermore, you almost stand a chance of losing your profession because of your not being able to meet the CPT hours. From your perspective, how can financial institutions and companies itself, like Trinity, better support individuals who come forward to report unethical practices?
Okay. If you are looking at institutions like Trinity, how best can they support individuals who report on corruption? What the most critical thing to me is these institutions must have policies and procedures. And in those policies and procedures, they must have anti-corruption policies. And my emphasis more will go to the tone of executive management, because fighting corruption rests with the hands of executive management and the directors. If there is no willingness from the top, then this cannot be achieved. So I would say that the institutions like Trinity, they are supposed to have proper policies, procedures that are there to support the fight against corruption.
Perhaps
They should also...
go ahead, Paswik.
Yeah, they should also have deliberate policies of protecting whistleblowers. Institutions must have incentives. And those deliberate policies must emphasize that reporting corruption is good. I would like also to say that these institutions must have what we call media and publicity strategy. You know, when you report on corruption, there's always negative publicity and there's always retaliation. So a whistleblower must always be protected, and institutions must ensure that when corruption has been reported, the whistleblower must be protected. And as I've said, the institutions must have connections. There must be a network, because my experience has shown me that these institutions cannot provide you all what you need as a whistleblower. Some institutions can provide legal network. Some institutions can provide security. So there must be a comprehensive network to ensure that you are able to deal with the events and activities that happen after you have reported. I think that's my contribution.
Great. Jean-Jacques, you want to answer that question as well? Just to, you know, from your perspective, how can, in your case, a financial institution better support individuals who come forward to report these unethical practices? Go ahead, Jean-Jacques.
Ben, les institutions, quand vous parlez d'institutions financières, c'est quelles institutions financières dont vous faites allusion?
Let's talk in your case about the bank and how banks can support, you know, individuals who come out and talk.
Au fait, les banques doivent travailler d'abord pour renforcer leurs institutions de conformité. Ça, c'est d'abord la priorité. Et deuxièmement, les banques doivent travailler pour qu'un système de dénonciation en interne soit fait. et que ce système soit le plus anonyme possible et le plus respecté possible déjà. Euh, Cela fera en sorte que ça puisse soutenir les lanceurs d'alerte. Les banques doivent eux-mêmes appuyer pour que les lanceurs d'alerte soient protégés déjà au niveau des pays. Et les banques doivent se montrer, pour les banques qui veulent, doivent se montrer assez coopératifs avec les lanceurs d'alerte parce que les lanceurs d'alerte ne sont pas les ennemis des institutions financières. Ça, c'est ce que beaucoup veulent faire croire. Si je donne mon cas, j'ai fait la corruption en étant dans la banque. Ce n'était pas pour faire éclabousser les méfaits de la banque, c'était pour aider à ce que les procédures et le processus s'améliorent au sein de la banque. Parce que, vous l'avez si bien dit, j'ai été directeur responsable de crédit. Donc, j'étais en même temps responsable du processus de cartographie des risques de crédit. Et donc, je connaissais assez bien là où il y avait les failles. Donc, le but de ma dénonciation interne, c'était de corriger les choses d'abord en interne. Parce que en dénonçant les choses en interne, si les mesures avaient été prises au niveau de ma hiérarchie, donc je parle pas de ma hiérarchie de Kinshasa, mais au moins de ma hiérarchie de Libreville, ça aurait permis de limiter la casse par rapport à ce qui se passait parce que les faits étaient évidents. J'ai fait des mails, j'ai écrit au groupe au Gabon qui pouvait prendre la décision de redresser les choses et de ne pas arriver au niveau où le scandale allait être éclaboussé au niveau des médias. Mais ils ont fait le choix de se taire et de regarder à côté. Et donc, je crois que les banques doivent faire des lanceurs d'alerte leurs alliés parce que nous ne sommes pas les personnes qui combattons les banques. Nous ne sommes pas les personnes qui combattons les systèmes financiers. Moi-même, en tant que financier économiste, je connais l'importance d'une institution financière et l'importance du financement dans la relance de l'économie. Vous savez, aujourd'hui, les économies dépendent essentiellement des PME. Et les PME ont besoin des financements. Les financements, on ne le trouve que dans des banques. Et donc, nous devons avoir des systèmes financiers très viables pour permettre à ce que nos économies africaines puissent aller de l'avant. Donc, nous, lanceurs d'alerte, ne sommes pas des ennemis des institutions financières. Nous sommes d'ailleurs des alliés des institutions financières. Et je pense que les institutions financières qui l'ont compris veulent et voudront bien faire de nous leurs alliés parce que nous travaillons pour qu'un système opaque puisse laisser place à un système qui est beaucoup plus sain.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jean-Jacques. Reflecting, before I move on to the next question, I just want to invite the audience to please put your questions. If you have any questions, please put them on the chat that's available on Zoom. So please just do that so that I can get to your questions a bit later. In the meantime, I'm going to ask Jean-Jacques to continue to say what measures do you believe that financial institutions need to put in place to ensure that people come up and speak and to ensure that they also become safe, you know, that they don't experience the same atrocities that you have. Jean-Jacques, maybe you can go first and then I'll ask Biswick to also go ahead after that.
Moi, je vais faire une proposition. C'est que les banques dans les pays fonctionnent en association. Que ce soit au Congo, que ce soit en Afrique du Sud, dans plusieurs pays, les banques fonctionnent en association. Il serait préférable de créer des centres de dénonciation au sein de l'association des banques. Et ces associations protégeraient d'abord l'anonymat des lanceurs d'alerte. Parce que ce qui est très évident, c'est que si un lanceur d'alerte se trouve dans une mauvaise posture de dénoncer la corruption au niveau interne, s'il la dénonce dans une structure de dénonciation faisant partie de la banque, cela peut être étouffé. Mais si la dénonciation est faite au niveau de l'association, les mesures rectificatives peuvent être prises au niveau de l'association. Peut-être que l'anonymat du lanceur d'alerte peut être rapidement garanti. Et la banque centrale doit faire, ou les banques centrales de ces pays ou de ces régions doivent faire partie de cette structure de dénonciation pour très vite diligenter les audits, contrôler et trouver des solutions. Parce que l'idée, ce n'est pas quand on est face à un effet, de venir frapper et de fermer l'institution. Non, l'idée, c'est de corriger et de redresser. Et donc, si cette institution de dénonciation se fait au niveau de l'association des banques, je cite le cas de l'ACB, Association congolaise des banques au niveau du Congo, au niveau de la COBA, par exemple, au niveau de l'Afrique centrale, au niveau, par exemple, je donne un exemple de ce qui se passe en Belgique, il y a une association qui s'appelle Belgique. Si ça se passe au niveau de ces structures-là, il y a une structure qui permet de dénoncer et que automatiquement cette alerte est remontée au niveau de l'inspection ou de la direction de la surveillance de la Banque centrale. Dès que l'audit est diligenté, je crois que ça va permettre de résoudre le problème, de résoudre la crise très rapidement et d'épargner le lanceur d'alerte qui a fait cette dénonciation, parce que là, au moins, on aura un audit qui ne parlera pas de cette dénonciation, mais qui viendra directement résoudre le problème qui s'est posé. Et là, le lanceur d'alerte son anonymat sera épargné et l'enquête, parce que quand l'enquête arrivera, elle n'arrivera forcément pas pour enquêter sur ce seul dossier. Mais ce dossier-là pour lequel on viendra enquêter fera partie d'un package dans l'enquête et la recommandation sera faite, un suivi sera fait. Et ça, c'est pas le lanceur d'alerte, ça protège son emploi et ça protège l'institution parce que s'il y a des mauvaises personnes qui sont complices dans ce qui se passe, aussitôt elles seront mises déférées devant la justice et l'institution pourra être pérennisée et évoluer. Donc ça, c'est une des propositions que je peux donner comme contribution aux institutions financières. Donc, c'est d'organiser des cellules d'alerte. Et en plus de cela, les États doivent soutenir ça en créant des lois, à l'instar de Sapin 2 en France, pour protéger les lanceurs d'alerte et protéger l'anonymat de cette institution de dénonciation.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that was a very, very innovative perspective, I think, from your side, Jean-Jacques. Let me move on to Biswick. Biswick, you want to answer that in terms of, based on and reflecting on your experience, what do you believe that companies need to put in place to ensure that there's an effective and safe environment for whistleblowing?
Okay, I'll just highlight a few things. Institutions must have deliberate policies to reward whistleblowers than persecution, because always we are in a situation whereby when you report something, then there's always persecution. So institutions must have deliberate policies to say, okay, we have good whistleblowers, and these people should not be persecuted. That's my first recommendations. Outside the institutions, we must have comprehensive laws protecting whistleblowers, because when I was in South Sudan, I didn't even read any law that protect whistleblowers. In Malawi, as we are talking right now, the laws protecting whistleblowers are not comprehensive. So yes, institutions can do something, but outside the institutions, there must be also laws protecting that. One of the consequences of being a whistleblower is that normally you face a legal process, a process that is very expensive. There must be a policy in the institution that even institutions can cover legal costs for you, or it can be on a pro bono basis or on a contingency basis. Because one of the key things that can derail whistleblowing within an institution are the legal costs that come after reporting. I need also to emphasize that when a whistleblower reports something, they must be protected from negative publicity. So an institution, a company, must ensure that it doesn't matter, you report all negative issues, will be able to handle about that, because negative publicity is very stressing. It derails. Institutions must also ensure what we call immediate security for whistleblowers. Okay, in a worst case scenario, they have to be put in safe houses, or they have to be they can have a facility of asylum. In South Sudan, one thing that I noticed, which was very painful, is the long trial in court. Long trial in court. You personally know that I will win this case, but for you to get justice, you are looking at a period of more than a year. So this means that countries, institutions should be able to ensure that the whistleblowers are also accorded a fair trial. But in terms of conviction of the offenders, where in the case that you are reporting, there must be also a speedy trial. I recommend my government in Malawi that they have set up what we call financial crimes courts, which are specifically to deal with corruption. And I believe that that is a faster way, that is a faster process to ensure that the culprits and the individuals that are involved are tried and the outcomes are known.
Great. I must apologize. I think the chat was disabled for a while. So if those in the audience, if you want to put your questions through, in the meantime, if you have a question, I think just unmute yourself and introduce yourself if you have a burning question that I could take on whilst if there's anybody. Perhaps I see we have some people. Is it Angie? You want to say something,
Yes.
Angie?
Yeah,
Please
good morning,
introduce yourself.
everyone.
I would suggest.
Okay, my name is Angie Mamokoma.
One
I
second.
worked at.
One second. Just put your video off because it's coming. It's not coming across very clearly because of the distortion in your data. Okay, go ahead, Angie. Angie, you can go ahead.
All right. Good morning at Absa Bank. I worked at Absa Bank in the trade department, where we were dealing with imports and exports transaction. I was a junior member or a junior manager in the trade department. So I joined the Absa coming from another bank in 2017. So when I started doing my quality assurance, and I picked up that there were export transactions that happened where revenue and VAT was not recorded. And I went and approached my immediate manager because initially I thought it was a process gap. But to my surprise, when I approached him to say, we've got various deals, but revenue, I do not see it in the revenue account of the bank. Her response was that I shouldn't report that risk that I've picked up. And I did not understand why, as a junior manager, it was my responsibility to identify any risk. And I went to the second manager, and the response I got was a threatening response that if I report that, I will be restructured. Immediately, I consulted with other managers that I worked with previously, and all our suspicion was that probably they knew where this revenue were going to. Unfortunately, I could not, lie in my reporting. I reported that on certain exports and collection deals that we are doing, revenue is not being showing into the revenue account. And since I reported that, I was then victimized, and to a point that in 2020, I was then dismissed as a poor performer, whereas all the performance management that were done since I joined the bank, I was never rated below a good performer. All my performance appraisals still shows that I was rated as a good performer. I've got all the evidence, and I've managed to gather all the evidence with all the allegations. And when I reported, apparently Protected Disclosure Act says that if one report do a whistleblowing, there needs to be an investigation. Since I actually reported whistleblowed once, I got the references from the bank whistleblower desk. There was never an investigation. What I heard was that investigations came, but those management that I reported this revenue loss to, they never allowed them to come and consult and get all the evidence from me. What they did was to, provide them with incorrect reporting. until I got one of the executive who then advised me that they got a report. A report says that there's no merit to my allegation. However, I am the one that made the allegations. I am the one that has all the evidence. And I have also explained to that executive manager that I saw the report that my manager, provided, and it is an incorrect report. It is not a report that shows that revenue and SARS were paid. So I was then dismissed. So I've been struggling from 2020 with legal representations. All the attorneys that I find at the initial point when I shared with them everything, all the evidence, they all agree that I've got prospects of success and they'll take my matter to the court. But as soon as they meet with the ABSA management, they now sing a different tune. To a point that one attorney who promised to file the papers for me and delayed the process. At the end, when I have now my matter has prescribed, he then advised that he will not assist me because he has a contract. He got a contract with ABSA Bank. And so I thought, let me approach the labor court as a layperson and explain, because I have strong feeling that I've got prospects of success. I have all the evidence in my position, and I've approached the labor court, and we have started engaging with the bank respondents, even though they are dragging. But you can imagine, as a layperson, trying to find justice against, a big giant like ABSA. And in my belief, I do not think, it's ABSA, because I worked for ABSA Bank before, and I never experienced this kind of a treatment. I just believe that it's those particular management in the trade department because they are not providing correct information to the seniors in the bank. So in my, wish was that, I wish, people at the top or shareholders, if they could just, hear my story. The reason why I was dismissed, that is the first point that will tell them that they were just trying to get me out of the system because I had all the evidence. When they dismissed me, they said I was a poor performer, and all the system and evidence that I have, it shows that I was never rated a poor performer. The reason that they kicked me out of the system was because I had all this evidence.
Thank you, Angie. I think in the interest of time, I want to move on. I'm going to share my email address and maybe just make contact with me, and then we'll take it from there. And I will take it through to all the necessary authorities that we possibly can. All right, I'm going to share my email address in the chat. I want to move on to a question that Devotion. Hello, Devotion. Good to see you on the session. And she says to Jean and to Jean-Jacques and Biswick, do you think that internal whistleblowing should be removed from legislation to allow for direct reporting of disclosure outside of the organization? Number one. And do you think that as professionals, reporting to other professionals such as auditors, investigators, etc., has also had a dire consequence for whistleblowing, as these individuals are often part of the organization? So perhaps let me ask Biswick to start with that.
Yeah, I'll answer the second part to say,
Yes.
if you are reporting to the internal members of the team, can it have some consequences? My experience is I would discourage a whistleblower to report corruption activities internally. Remember, my presentation, I've highlighted that before you blow the whistle, you need to review the system, because there are two things that we should look here. There's an error and there's a continuous error. If it is a continuous error, that is a red flag for illegal activity. So that's why I'm saying that, first of all, you need to review the system and you have to be comfortable by yourself. Once you are convinced that no, there are corrupt activities here, this is now the time when you have to collect all your data and report to interested stakeholders. Like in my case, if I had reported corruption to the South Sudanese police, there would have been no results. If I had reported this issue to Anti-Corruption Bureau in Malawi to say they can't, in Malawi, in South Sudan, these are the issues that I've identified, nothing would have happened.
Mhm.
But I reported to an interested institution, the Centre, and they spent millions and millions to do an investigation. So right now, I don't have any confidence within the internal system and government systems. I have confidence in reporting corrupt activities to institutions like the Centre, to institutions like the PLAF, because these institutions have got a desire and they have got high levels of integrity to pursue these matters. So I don't trust internal systems anymore.
Good. Thank you. Thanks. What about reporting it to the Institute of Directors or the chartered, your chartered accounting, your controlling body, your regulatory body? Just very, very quickly, because in the interest of time, we need to end. What about reporting to those institutions?
Yeah. You can report to those institutions when you have got an independent report supporting your case. So, for example, as like me, I'm a chartered accountant. I would love to report to my professional body once I have a comprehensive report. Once I have a report that cannot be disputed, that is objective, then I can proceed and report to my professional body.
Great. Jean-Jacques, you wanted to answer a question that we got from Devotion with regards to whether whistleblowing should be removed from legislation.
Je suis tout à fait d'accord avec M. Kassoaswa sur la dénonciation interne qui présente la garder d'un point de vue protocolaire, parce que pour certaines institutions, et ces institutions-là, il faudra en trouver, je ne crois pas qu'il y en ait beaucoup, c'est toujours compliqué et complexe de dénoncer la corruption en interne. C'est la raison pour laquelle vous avez vu quand j'ai fait ma proposition d'idée, c'était de créer une situation qui soit beaucoup plus transverse avec des institutions qui fassent partie d'une association et d'un organe de contrôle ou de régulation dessus qui viennent s'abreuver de ça. Et à un moment donné, je pense qu'il faut même aller au niveau international parce que deux fois la corruption est un système qui est bien huilé dans le pays. Et malheureusement, même si vous emmenez ça au niveau de l'institution de régulation, je donne mon cas, pour que la Banque centrale puisse prendre en considération mes accusations concernant le détournement des fonds qui se sont passés au sein de la Banque centrale, il a fallu qu'un gouvernement change, qu'une autre gouverneur de la Banque centrale arrive pour que ce dossier puisse rebondir. Parce que pour des raisons politiques, même à un moment donné, la Banque centrale est sous les bottes du président de la République et malheureusement, son indépendance dans une enquête comme celle que j'ai dénoncée ne sont pas garanties et malheureusement, des enquêtes comme ça peuvent rester lettre morte et on peut se retrouver dans une situation très difficile. Donc, dénonciation interne, oui, à garder dans une certaine mesure, mais il faut plus le faire en externe et auprès des institutions auprès de qui ça peut avoir un grand retentissement.
Yes, she goes on further to say whether whistleblowing laws should be within the criminal law ambit and not joined to the labor laws of a particular country. What are your thoughts on that, Jean-Jacques? Yeah. Okay. So do you think that whistleblowing laws should be within the ambit of criminal law or labor law? So often it is taken as, within the labor law situation, and that results in staff being dismissed using various tactics based on that. Now, so Devotion wants to know whether the whistleblowing laws should not be joined and be part of the criminal law system rather than the labor law system. Biswick, I'll let you to answer that while Jean-Jacques gathers his thoughts on that.
Okay.
Pour répondre et donner mon cas personnel, je crois qu'il faudrait faire les deux, ou même plus que ça. Parce que, vous savez, j'ai été victime sur le plan du droit du travail et ce que j'ai dénoncé fait partie du droit criminel en même temps. Et donc, les dénonciations et les actions juridiques doivent se faire à tous les niveaux. Parce que si nous nous arrêtons au sein du droit du travail, la loi même au sein du pays en question de ce qui se passe peut être limitée. Et moi, j'ai eu une chance énorme de bénéficier d'une juridiction au-delà de la mienne du Congo, parce qu'une grande jurisprudence est arrivée dans le cadre des dénonciations que j'avais faites. Aujourd'hui, tout résident en France, comme moi, étant victime de ce que j'ai vécu, peut porter plainte en France et avoir gain de cause du moment où il a une résidence ici en France. Donc, il faut aller au-delà des juridictions naturelles parce que malheureusement, toute la juridiction du pays peut être compromise et vous ne risquez de jamais avoir gain de cause si vous arrêtez sur une seule juridiction et si vous arrêtez sur un seul droit, celui du droit du travail, parce que sur le droit du travail, ils peuvent trouver des parades. C'est le travail qui a été menacé, oui, mais c'est aussi une criminalité qu'il faut dénoncer et condamner.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Let me move on to Biswick. I can see that you're burning to answer that question, Biswick. You're on mute. Biswick, you're on mute.
Okay, all right. You know, when you're a whistleblower, there are some other consequences which you experience, and one of them is the normally they dismiss you, and if you've been dismissed, I mean, it's a civil case in nature. You can complain to the court of law as a civil case, which should be within the labor laws. But also, they create criminal charges against you, which falls within criminal law. Therefore, with my experience, I believe that all these laws must work together because whistleblowing has an element of labor law there. And also there are criminal activities that are framed against you. I still have a belief that these laws must work hand in hand together because you cannot separate that. I would love to have labor laws separately to deal with all whistleblower issues in relation to the labor matters. And also criminal law, which should clearly deal with issues that are criminal in nature in relation to whistleblowing. I think that would be better because, like in my case, it's going to be so difficult to implement and separate these laws separately. I mean, it will be difficult, and it is going to be a lengthy process, which will be to a disadvantage of a whistleblower to consolidate the laws to support the whistleblower. I would love to have the labor laws as they are separately and the criminal laws as they are separately.
Okay. I just want to do one more quickly. Do you believe that the role of the industry regulatory bodies for banks, financial institutions, all other regulatory bodies should have more stringent requirements that will include reporting on whistleblowing or any corrupt activity? Just very quickly, because we need to wrap up. In 30 seconds, please, Biswick.
Yes, it is very necessary because these are regulatory institutions who have got an oversight on the professional activities and the other institutions. So, for example, in my case as a chartered accountant, I would have loved if SCCA has got so much emphasis into the behavior and also encouraging reporting on corruption, fraud, and they should have room for that. Because all along, I don't know whether it is me, but I've never had an idea to report corrupt activities to my professional body. So either maybe there's no campaign towards that, but I would rather to have that professional body, my professional body, to encourage reporting on corruption and also a room for whistleblowing.
Oh, fantastic. Any last words from you, Jean-Jacques?
Ouais, que dit la question?
No, is there any last words from you before we wrap up? Just in very,
En tout
very
cas,
quickly.
le dernier mot, c'est le mot le plus facile qu'il puisse y avoir dans ce monde. C'est déjà de vous dire thank you, merci de nous avoir donné cette tribune. Merci à M. Kaswaswa et tous mes encouragements pour le combat qu'il mène, pour lui qui nous a reçus aujourd'hui. Et j'espère que ce ne sera pas le dernier et peut-être à très bientôt sur vos terres pour pouvoir tenir une conférence en live et pouvoir parler avec vous de vive voix. Merci et je crois que le combat continue. C'est un sujet vaste, énorme et sur lequel il faut continuer à réfléchir pour trouver des solutions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Biswick, any last word from you before we wrap up?
The process of fighting corruption is not an easy process. It needs us to work together as a team. I believe that your integrity would drive you to do what I've done. I reported corruption in South Sudan because there are a lot of people that are suffering in South Sudan. I reported because I have passion for South Sudanese. The same applies to everyone. With your integrity, have a drive to report for corruption. No matter how hard it is going to be, no matter how they will press you down, no matter how they will threaten you, justice is going to prevail. And this is what happened to me. That's why I'm here as a witness that we will fight. And this is war. Let us be prepared and we are going to win this war.
Thank you. You know, hearing the stories of these two brave individuals, I can't emphasize more the role of ethical integrity in the corporate sector. I want to acknowledge their courage, their resilience, but also the need for systemic change to ensure that whistleblowers are protected and celebrated rather than persecuted. It's important that international organizations create awareness and that we all cooperate to enhance the safety and rights of whistleblowers. Once again, I want to thank the PPLAAF, the Frederick Naumann Foundation, and Gibbs for allowing us this opportunity to create this platform for us to discuss this important topic. I think the time itself to discuss this is certainly not enough, and we must continue the fight to ensure that whistleblowers are protected. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your attention and for taking the time. We've been here for more than an hour and a half, and we still haven't even touched the surface yet. So, thank you very much. Pusetso, Gemma, is there anything else from you?
No, from us, it's just a thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time, Mr. Lechman. It's highly appreciated. Thank you very much, Jean-Jacques, for taking the time. Thank you, Biswick, for taking the time. And to all of you in the room, thank you very, very much for taking the time. I always say that, you know, it'll be unfortunate that our family members and our friends and our neighbors, you know, find themselves in trouble when we know better, when we know something about fighting corruption, how to report it in a way that is safe, that is strategic. So do share wherever you are, do share with family members, do share with friends, do share with colleagues this information. It may actually help them. It may reduce the thorns and the tumble dryer moments should they actually dare to have the courage to report the corrupt and report corruption. That's all I can really say. Thank you really very much for taking the time. And for those who are in South Africa, this evening we are actually having a film, why Babita Deokaran died, why she was murdered. Hopefully we can see most of you there. And if you can't make it, do invite someone. It's all about sharing information. It's all about prevention. But prevention in terms of the harm, or harms and damages that one can suffer because they've blown the whistle. So with that, thank you so much and have a good morning and afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Bye.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.